Welcome back to my channel. This is DebtFree.cf, and I'm going to go over a January budget setup and then filling in a little bit. I know that this is going to be a late post. Unfortunately, I was traveling and then I had the flu, so I'm just getting to it now. If you haven't checked out the bi-weekly budget setup, you should do that. It's another video, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a sneak peek so you can switch over to that video if you want to see how to apply budgeting to a bi-weekly check setup. Now, I do actually get bi-weekly checks, but I just go ahead and add them in to the actual as I get them, and don't worry about that. For the first half of the month I may have a variance or a difference between the total income and the total expenses for the entire month as being negative. The way that I'm able to do that without being stressed out is that I already have extra money in my bank account, so I'm really working a month ahead. So actually some of the numbers are like, if I'm using December's income that's already in my bank account that I haven't used yet to pay my January bills, and then as I'm getting paid in January, that's just kind of sitting there, and then that is going to be used to pay my February bills. That's working a month ahead. But putting that aside, let's just kind of look at some of the numbers. You'll notice that the layout from 2017 to 2018 has changed just a little bit. I made it a little bit bigger because a couple people requested to be able to read the numbers, so making it larger so that they're more clear. And then I also have a little bit of a decorative border that's going to change from month to month, kind of just to make it fun, and then cleaning up some of the other stuff that was just kind of my notes and numbering and so forth that has been adjusted a little. So I'm going to leave out a couple of numbers, although you'll still see totals, so you can just kind of reference back to other videos if it matters to you. But it's just going to be a little bit more generic when it comes to some of the numbering. Now, on the income, I've got an estimated where, based off of some of my paychecks from previous months, I think that I'm going to have a certain amount coming in for the month. It's going to be a little bit higher this month because of some holidays that I'll be working. I don't know if it's pay and a half or double pay, but when I work holidays I get paid a little bit more, and I do work holidays if my normal shift happens to land on the holiday, only because unless I have other plans, there's no reason for me to not benefit from getting paid more, given that I was going to work that day anyway. So, for example, I worked on Christmas, I worked on New Year's. I was a little bit tired on New Year's, but, you know, whatever. There were very few calls coming in for the particular part of the job I was working on. Now, moving on to expenses. Because I was traveling at the beginning of the month, I have a slightly lower grocery budget this month than I normally would because I was able to eat with family. The eating out that I did, I'm going to put in kind of the fun or miscellaneous type category because it was things that were special to that month that would not be normal behavior. While it was food, it doesn't really matter if it goes in the grocery budget. I would probably put restaurants in there only if it's something that's planned ahead of time. Like, my partner and I sometimes go to restaurants maybe like 2 or 3 times in a month. It kind of depends on how busy and whether or not there's a particular day where we've just been busy and then we're not feeling like cooking. But that just goes in the grocery budget because we know that a couple times a month we're going to end up purchasing food somewhere other than the grocery store. But in the utilities, those are pretty normal, fluctuate only a little bit higher right now because of running the heat. But other than that, somewhat standard. And if I wanted, because I do have years worth of budgets, I could go back and compare from one year to the next to see if habits were the same. But since it doesn't really matter other than curiosity, I don't tend to do that. The rent is there. That doesn't change. Cell phone bill doesn't change. Gasoline's always an estimate. I don't drive a ton, so I don't even always use up the allotted amount that I give myself. For my sinking fund, or the entire estimated costs over the course of the year divided up over the 12 months, I've determined that I need to put in about $96 a month for pet needs. That includes licensing for the dog, vaccinations for all 3 animals, taking them to the vet for any kind of emergency is not really included in there, but I do overestimate a little bit, so there might be an extra $50 at the end of the year. And then if I actually had an emergency, I could use my emergency fund. Yeah, I haven't had many emergencies. I guess just some unexpected bills, but I had enough to cover them in terms of the past, so I think this will work. So I've calculated that, plus any additional things, like if I know that the dog needs nails trimmed or there's going to be some boarding because of travel plans or whatever, that'll go in there month to month. Don't have any standing annual or monthly anything medical, so I just kind of leave that open, but I do have on the right hand side under my sinking funds kind of a $250 account just kind of sitting in savings. Like if I had I don't know, I broke my leg a couple years ago. If I had another broken leg to go get scans and to go get the cast and whatever, that's about how much I think I ended up paying with my insurance. So car insurance went up a little bit since last year. I'm now paying $36-ish a month. And then at the beginning of the month, I took $80 out cash for various purposes of eating out, treating friends to a meal, just kind of traveling around doing some things with friends that I was seeing. So I'm just going to leave that as an even amount. I haven't actually spent all of it. Some of it's still in my wallet, but I'll probably try to use that for something where I would normally otherwise have to get cash out. So I'll just kind of hang on to it. If at the end of the month I haven't used it, I will recalculate the number. My plan for my Roth IRA is to put in $500 this month and next month to round off 2017. So there's a rule where you can still contribute to last year's Roth before you file your taxes. So up through April or tax day, you can still be making contributions to last year. I try not to do that because then it domino effects where I have fewer months in the given year to actually put in for that given year. If for any reason you have the entirety of the amount, like if you're allowed to put in $5,500 and you have $5,500 available at the beginning of the year, you should put that $5,500 into the Roth IRA in January, because then you can accrue interest for the entire year rather than waiting 6 months and losing out 6 months interest, or waiting all the way until December and then filling the Roth IRA and missing out on the entire year's worth of interest. But if you don't have it and you need to pay in month to month, then you can certainly do that. But the sooner you can put it in for any given year, the better. So I'm going to put in $500 this month and next month, and that'll go at the end of the month just because I do need to wait for the second or third paycheck to come through so that my numbers aren't negative here at the bottom in the variance. I've got a couple of different things that I track on the right-hand side. I'm following some of the Dave Ramsey baby steps. You can see that I'm on baby step 4 and 5 at the same time. 4, 5, and 6 at the same time. I'm skipping 5, so my 5 is really 6. But basically saving 15% or more into retirement, and I do actually go over 15% because I put in about 6% out of my paycheck before I see my paycheck because of employer contribution match, and then I max out the Roth IRA at $5,500, and the $5,500 for the Roth IRA plus the 6% from my paycheck together accumulate to more than 15% of my total income. And then I have to keep reminding myself that, because sometimes when my paychecks are low, I'm like, man, if I had a little bit more coming from my paycheck, like it wouldn't be so hard to meet my personal goals of the Roth IRA plus actually saving into like a house fund, or in this particular set of months, a Korea travel fund, or something else where I'm just trying to build some wealth or build a fund. And I have to keep telling myself, well, you're really only working with 80 to 85% of your total income because you're already putting all these other things into savings. So one of the things that Dave Ramsey talks about is like you can't do more than one thing, or you can't do multiple things and get ahead. And if I was fighting debt and trying to save, that would totally make sense. Like I would just feel like I was getting nowhere. But I am getting somewhere, and I can see the progress. I can see some of the numbers change, and that's part of why I do the budgeting, so I can keep track. And I mean, obviously, budgeting so you can tell your money where to go, but then you can also look back at where did your money go when you're at the end of the month, and you're like, oh yeah, I was able to cover all of these things and get these into these different funds. So that's what I'm working on. So the other thing that I would check in with is, since I'm kind of partway into the month, I did already spend like I think $13.67 or something in this category, and the other bills were paid. Coming up, I'm actually going to be making a deduction from the pets category in February. That's coming up, and these numbers in the different funds will update to match accordingly. And I don't try to zero out or rectify the sinking funds until kind of the end of the month, because sometimes I need to double check my math and readjust a few of the things where they go. So like, for example, Roth needs to be 500 in there. So this is kind of the setup for the month to month. It hasn't changed at all in the order of the expenses, because those are really based off of the priority of what things need to be paid first for well-being and kind of stress management for sure if you're fighting debt. And then I do personally my right-hand side of all of the tracking, just so that I know what I'm doing and where I'm going. So this is the January 2018 setup and like very beginning check-in, because we're about 10 days in, and then I will check in a little bit later in the month where we're actually at about the halfway point, and then I'll have a wrap-up coming at the end of the month as well. So come back and stay tuned. Thanks for watching.